Hello everyone from all over the world. Welcome to my session on Excel Virtually Global 2021 on Office scripts. My name is Jan Karel Pieterse and I'm ready for you here today to talk about Office scripts. First, a little bit about myself. I'm a chemical engineer by education and I've first worked in the chemical industry for like 19 years. During that time, I started using spreadsheets to process my data. And the first spreadsheet application I used was Lotus 123, way back in the mid 80s when computers still ran on DOS. Then in 1996, I started using Excel version 5 back then. And in 2002, I received my first Microsoft MVP award for Excel. Ever since 2003, I'm a self-employed Excel consultant, and you can find me at jkp-ads.com. So what are we going to do today? First, we'll do the getting started bit, and that is to make sure that you can actually start recording scripts. So that is the admin stuff. Then I'll be recording my first script. After that, I'll show you how the scripts are organized, and that means where they are stored. We will then start writing a script from scratch just to show you how that is done. I'll talk a little bit about performance improvements. Then I'll talk about debugging, how to share a script, and if there's time left, we'll have a Q&A at the end. Recording your first script. So now that the admin has enabled you to record scripts, we're ready to record our first scripts. And the way to do that is to first open a workbook in which you do actions which the script recorder is going to record. So let's open up a workbook that I prepared specifically for this. You'll notice at the top that the Automate tab doesn't appear immediately. If it doesn't appear at all for you, it might be a good idea to delete all of your cookies of the browser. Because sometimes if it doesn't appear but your admin says that the switch is turned on, then start your browser in a private window to see if the Automate tab appears. If it appears, then it's time to get rid of your cookies and try again. That being said, let's go to the Automate tab and see what's there. So the first button is the most important one. It's the Record Actions button, and that's the button you press if you want to start recording a macro or a script. The second button enables you to start writing a new script from scratch. We'll do that later on in this session. And then there's a gallery that contains all of the scripts that you've written or used recently. If you start using Office scripts for the very first time, then this gallery contains a number of sample scripts. It's currently empty because I have emptied the location where my scripts are just for this presentation. So let's start recording. Let me first click on cell A1. So we're going to walk through this list and record those actions. So I'm starting the recorder now, and as you can see, we have a side pane here that says that we're recording, and there's a stop button here to actually stop recording. And look, we even have a restart button so that we can redo the entire recording from scratch. Okay, so I said enter my name in A1. Sorry for the loud keyboard. And I'll enter the date and current time in A2, and then I'll enter region into A4 and sales into B4. And then I'll create a table, Control L in my case. My table has headers. That's right. And I'll change the name of the table. Regional sales, let's call it regional sales, and let me enter some data here. So we have north, we have south, and we have east, and we have west. And let's make up some sales: 100, 200, 100, and minus 50. That's odd. Let's not do minus 50. Let's do 50. And that's it. And if you look at the right, you actually see in shorthand what the recorder has noticed that you've been doing. So let's stop the recorder here. And let's have a look at the code. And all there is to it is clicking this edit button. And let's make this slightly larger. Editor settings, font size, 18. Oh, great, thank you. I'm going to go back to Automate, click script 1, edit script 1. And there we are. This is our recorded script. And let's fold this to a shorter right, so that we can see all of the script in the window. So let's talk through this script here, and I'll tell you what's going on. So every script you record starts with the same first bit. The function is always called main, and the argument that the function gets is always the active workbook. So Office scripts always work on one workbook, never on more than one. So the first action that the script does is it sets a variable called selected sheet, and as you can see, the recorder made up that name for you, to the active worksheet using that workbook object, that workbook variable that was passed to the script by the script recorder, and it uses the method called active worksheets to get the active worksheet. Then it's actually sets cells A1 and A2 together to the values that I entered. So actually the script recorder more or less tied together the two entries that I made, namely my name and the date and time, and puts them into the sheet in one command. The same goes for the two table headers that I entered, region and sales. It pushes that to the grid in one command, and that is to save on performance, because the more you interact with Excel, the slower your script becomes. So if you can push as many as the entries into one command as you can, it makes your script faster. Next, I inserted a table that apparently creates this line here, let new table equals workbook.add table, for the range A4 to B5, and true is the checkbox that I set marking that the table has headers. Then I renamed the table, and finally I entered data for north, south, east, and west. And as you can see, that too is entered into the spreadsheet in just one command. So let's just test if this script works. I'm going to get rid of all of this. Let's just right click and delete cells and shift up, and let's just run the script and see if we get what we expect. Well, there you go. We have my name again with a new time and the same data that I entered earlier. So let's see if this actually works, and do 250 as the West sales. Get rid of this again, delete, and run the script, and you should see 250 at the bottom here. It works. Good. Now let's move on to how scripts are organized, or in short, where are they stored? To find them, you go to your OneDrive. And in OneDrive, you click the Documents folder. And there it is. The Office Scripts folder contains all of the scripts that you've written and recorded using the Automate tab. So currently it only contains one called script1.osts. So that's all there is to it. That's where your scripts are. If you want to do other stuff with scripts, the Automate tab is the place to be. Writing your own scripts from scratch. So let's write a script from scratch. The first thing to do, of course, is determine what are we going to write. And I came up with the idea to write a script that first checks your workbook to see if there's a sheet tab named TOC for Table of Contents. And if it's there, it deletes it. And then it inserts a new one and adds a table to that sheet which contains all of your worksheets and a hyperlink to each cell A1 of each of them. And to do that hyperlinking, I use the hyperlink function, and I'll show you that. F2 hyperlink, and the trick of the hyperlink function is if you want to point to an internal worksheet, you start using the pound sign, a single apostrophe to cater for worksheet names that has a space in them, then add the name of the sheet, which is in the cell to the left, and then enter an apostrophe again, exclamation mark, and the cell that we want the hyperlink to point to. And then finally, the last argument is the text that we want displayed, which is the name of the sheet. And to prove that this works, I'll click on sheet 3 and you'll see that we get pushed to sheet 3. So that is actually the function that we want written. So we click the Automate tab and click on New Script. And the script editor opens with a blank script with nothing in here. So let's get rid of this comment and start writing. So the first thing I said was we want to check whether a worksheet named TOC exists, and if it does, delete it. And I stole this from the sample scripts, which is in the link that's at the end of the presentation with example stuff. I'm sorry. And okay, continue here. So, and that's done by using an if statement. So here's the structure of an if statement in JavaScript. If workbook, and we want to get a worksheet dot get worksheet TOC. And actually, this is all that's needed in the first argument of the if statement, because this statement actually returns a false if the worksheet does not exist. So we then want to execute, supposing it exists, we want to set a temporary variable to that particular worksheet using the same structure again. So let me copy that. Control C equals that. And let's get rid of it. Temp.delete. Don't forget the open and closing parentheses, otherwise it won't work. So this little function actually checks for a worksheet called TOC, and if it's there, it deletes it. So let's try that. Let's just run this and you should see the TOC sheet disappear. There you go, that works. Good. We're not there yet. So now we need a list of all worksheets in the workbook. So let's assign a new variable called all sheets and get from workbook again dot get worksheets, this time the plural version, because that gives us all worksheets. We need opening and closing parentheses again and the semicolon to end the statement. So that gives us all worksheets. Now we can add the worksheet that will actually contain the table of contents, the TOC sheet. So let's just add that. Let TOC sheet equals workbook dot add worksheet TOC. Not difficult, is it? We need a pointer to a cell so that we know where we are. Let's start the TOC in cell B2. Let report cell, and you only have to do the let once, the first time you use a variable. And we're going to use TOC sheet dot range, get range, cell B2, see my column to close the statement. So that's report cell. And let's add a table at that position. Net new table equals workbook dot add table report where in the report cell location, report cell, and it will have headers, and that's it. See my column. Let's set the header of the table, report cell dot get resize range. So the report cell is only one cell wide, and I want to set a value to 2 cells next to each other. So I'm going to resize by 0 rows and by 1 column. So this actually gives us the cells B2 and B3, C2 equals, dot set values, because it's more than 1. And what are we setting? We are setting an array which needs double opening square brackets, and then we are passing worksheet as the header and link. Link, did I type link? Link, yes. Right, so let's see what this gives us. Run. Well, there you go. We have a tab TOC, and it contains a table that has a first column named worksheet and the second column named link. Good, we're doing well. Next thing to add is actually go through the all sheets collection, which does not contain the TOC sheet, which is why I first delete the TOC sheet before I actually assign all worksheets to the variable called all sheets. So we're going to loop through that collection of all sheets, and I'm going to use a loop counter to do that. So we're going to use for, and we're going to use loop counter I, let space I equals 0, see my column, all sheets dot length, and I'm going to end the loop when I'm going to actually end the loop, and I'm going to end the loop when I is less than, greater than all sheets dot length, for as long as, okay. I'm going to run that loop for as long as I is less than all sheets dot length, and at each pass I will add 1 to I, which is this statement, and we're going to do that right here. Okay, so now we're ready to actually write the worksheet names into the table. So when we start, this table is actually empty. So let's delete it now here, just for presentation purposes, right? What we need to have the code do is write sheet 1 into here and sheet 2 into here. Never mind the typos. So for that, we're going to use the report cell variable that we already created above, and use a new feature that I haven't shown you yet, is using get offset range. So we're going to offset the position of the report cell using that I counter in the loop, I, which on the first count is 0, and actually we're starting on B2, so we must add +1. I'm going to use column 1 for this, so I'm going to not offset any columns. And here we're going to set the value of that cell. And given that we're only setting the value of one cell at a time, we use the singular version of set value in this case, and not set values multiple. So opening bracket, what are we setting? We're actually setting the name of all sheets, square bracket I, closing square bracket, dot get name, opening and closing bracket. And that should be all. So let me just run this and see what happens. And let's check the TOC page. And there you go. We have a sheet 1, sheet 2, and sheet 3. So now what about that link that I just talked about? And that's actually slightly more difficult because I'm using the hyperlink function. So let me just type the hyperlink function. No, let me just record a macro because I don't know the syntax for actually adding a link to a cell. So let me just record my action. So equals hyperlink. And the hyperlink has this special syntax that I mentioned just some minutes ago, where I have to add the pound sign and the first, the apostrophe, and I'm joining that with the content of cell B3, and to that I'm adding the cell address that I wanted to point to, namely A1. And then I want a friendly name, which is again B3. Enter. So let me stop that recorder and see what has been recorded. Edit. Interesting. Apparently it knows what cell I used, and then it uses a formula called a command called set formula local. This is something I don't like because, for example, imagine that your coworker is entering this formula into a sheet, but your coworker is using Excel in Dutch. He might have different separators than you have. For example, you have the semicolon, but he might have the comma as a list separator in his spreadsheet. So what I would prefer that macro recorder or script recorder to do is actually use set formula. And because we were smart enough to convert this range to a table, this statement should be all we need to actually fill the entire column with the same formula. So let me just copy this. Copy. And go back to my scripts. And find my script. Oh, I can just click here. Script 1, I think it was. Script 1, edit. There you go, script 1. So we need to put that within. No, it doesn't need to go within the for loop. It needs to go outside of the for loop. So I'll paste here, and selected sheet actually is the TOC sheet. And well, C3 is still the right cell. So let's see if this works. Yeah, let's just run this. Well, look here. Sheet 1 can't open link. There must be a typo in the link. Let me double check that formula. Hyperlink, pound sign, apostrophe, B4, apostrophe. We're missing the exclamation mark here. So that means, let me test this. The hyperlink works. That means that that same exclamation mark should go there. Let's run the code again. TOC. There you go. Now we have working hyperlinks. Great. So that was our first script that we manually wrote. Of course, we should give that script a meaningful name. So let's just rename the script. 3 dots here, rename insert table of content. There you go. So now it's time for performance improvements. But in order to actually know whether you've made any improvements, you first have to have a means of recording the time that your script takes. So to our insert table of content script, I've added 2 lines. The first one is recording the starting moment of your script. And the second line I've added is the one that records the past time into the log area of the console here. To see that works, I'll just click Run. And you'll see the number 433 appear here. Let's just write those numbers to the cells and run this a couple of times. Run 393, 393, run again, 514. And as you can see, the number varies quite a bit. 398, it's now entering into nowhere, 398. And of course, I could have written the script to update these cells directly, but I didn't. 454, 454, enter, run, 361. Boring, but effective. So the average of this 425. Good. So that's just our current script. So how would we optimize this script? OfficeScript is actually TypeScript. So each of the variables that you're using can actually be assigned a object type. So for example, for the start, that's our starting date, that actually is a number. And our temporary variable, that is a worksheet. So we have to use the objects Excel script library dot worksheet. And remember that it's all case sensitive. So if you mistype any of them by using the wrong case, that'll cause problems indicated by the squiggly lines. So yeah, and all sheets, that's also a worksheet, but it's a collection of worksheets. So the syntax for that is Excel script dot worksheet square brackets. So that's the syntax. So in order to save you the boring repeat of entering stuff, I'm going to open the insert table of content 1, where I have added all the variable types already. Also to save me typing and save me from mistakes. And so here I have defined the type of each and every variable in this script. So let's see if we get different timings for this script. So let's run this. It does exactly the same except for the variable declaration. So we have a 405 here, 405, 379, 379, 400, 377, run, 397, run, 501. And as you can already see, the numbers vary quite a little bit. And it may take quite a number of tests to get a stable result, and maybe remove outliers and everything before you can actually compare these numbers. But as you can see, there is a difference, and I've tested this with longer scripts, and it can run up to as much as 20% depending on exactly what your script is doing. So a script with everything declared might run as much as 25% faster than a script where you haven't declared any variables. So that's a way to, one, measure performance, and second, make improvements. Other important improvements to your script speed are to, instead of writing the value of each worksheet name to the table of contents one by one, you can imagine that it's more efficient to gather these worksheet names into an array and write the array into cells A3 to A5 in one statement. So that's also quicker. So avoid for next loops, writing values or reading values from sheets one at a time. Try and write everything in one go. Debugging. Right, so if you've ever debugged VBA code, you know that you can step through code, set what next statement to execute and stuff like that, change variable names on the fly and all sort of beautiful stuff. You can't do that with OfficeScript, I'm afraid. OfficeScript runs on a server, so you can't actually F8 through your code like you used to when you're programming VBA. In fact, the only real thing that you can do is write stuff to, for example, the immediate window, let's call it the immediate window, the console log, or maybe to cells. So, for example, if we want to know whether or not this if statement yields a true, we can use console.log yes talk exists, and we'll see my column. So if we now run the script, we should see that text appear here. Yes, talk exists. And if we remove the table of contents first, delete, okay, and then run the script, we should not see that message appear here. So that works. And in fact, that's really the only thing that you can do. So at the right spot, enter a console.log to display that something's happening. For example, here you might show the counter, console.log I, something like that. What's wrong here? Yes, it's now warning me that if I put a console.log inside a loop, it could lead to slow performance, but who cares because I'm doing this on purpose. So now I have run this script. It should show 1, 2, 3 here. 0, 1, 2, of course. So there you go. Console.log is your friend when debugging scripts. Sharing scripts. So if you want your coworker to have access to your scripts, you might think that you can share scripts right from the list of scripts right here using the 3 dots. It's not here. You have to actually do that on a per script basis by clicking on the script itself, and then the 3 dots here have a share option. Unfortunately, the only sharing option we have at the moment is by sharing the script by attaching it to the workbook that we are currently looking at. So there's no means of sharing a script as it is with your coworkers. You can only share a script with a workbook. Yeah, let me just click share. So now this script is shared with all my coworkers inside this workbook. So it's available in this workbook for my coworkers. And I can unshare that script, stop sharing, by clicking the same 3 dots and selecting stop sharing. And I have a checkbox here that says stop sharing in all workbooks. So if I have attached this script to multiple workbooks, I can stop sharing on all those workbooks in one go. Unfortunately, I don't have a list of workbooks that script has been shared with here. I don't know if there's a way to actually find that out. So that concludes my presentation on Office scripts, and it's time to open the floor for questions and answers. I thank you for listening, and I hope you'll enjoy the next sessions. Please type your answers in the chat window, and I'll try to answer them as quickly as possible. Thank you.